Hey everybody, welcome to The Wrong End of the Snake. It's a webcast about audio, touring, and the relationships we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on The Wrong End of the Snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably 10 years as front of house and monitor mixers for Linkin Park. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend. He has 9 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Engineer of the Year awards. I'm Ken Van Druten, aka Pooch. I'm a front of house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry, a 3-time Grammy-nominated recording engineer. I have 8 Top Dog Front of House Engineer of the Year awards, and I am also a winner of the Parnelli Front of House Engineer of the Year award. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to be able to ask questions of our guests, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. Links to register are in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app. We will answer as many questions as possible during the hour and then answer any leftover questions in our Q&A overtime episode. Look for that to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in a few days. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to visit our social media. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you tell us about our guest this week?
All right, thanks, Pooch. That was an awesome intro, as always. This week we have Stanley Skip TWITCHELL. Skip is a video director, traveling barista, curious global explorer. He started producing shows at Indiana University and spent most of his career with Nocturne Productions, providing video support to a wide variety of touring clients, including Andrea Bocelli, Bon Jovi, Metallica, Journey, The Eagles, The Who, Prince, Robin Williams, Paul Simon, Sting, Aerosmith, Charlie Sheen, Linkin Park, and many, many others. His production credits include also entertainment design for a sponsorship village of the 2006 Winter Olympics in Torino, Italy. Skip has been worshiping at the Church of the Shared Musical Experience for over 40 years. Let's welcome husband to Kate, all-around good guy, and the best damn video director you could ever tour with, Stanley Skip TWITCHELL.
Yeah.
Hi, Skip. How are you, my friend?
I'm really good. I'm hanging in here.
Hanging in there.
Yes, we can.
How's the weather there in Roppongi at the train bar? Since you're sitting out front.
Snow's coming soon.
Yeah, okay.
No,
Well, being that you are a video director, we would have expected that you would have had all kinds of backgrounds and fun stuff. I'm sure you have some in store for us.
It'll play through as we go through here. Let's get some other stuff.
I like starting with the train bar. Our love of train bar is one of the best places in the world.
Goes long, many, many years of love.
I've got a side page for favorite roadie bars somewhere on Facebook that I've been.
Oh, wow.
Places like the Spleen and in Australia. Oh, stuff from all over the world.
What's that other bar in, I'm having trouble remembering it, the one that everyone went to where all the models hang out there in Tokyo?
Oh, you're talking about Lexington Queen.
Lexington Queen, yeah.
Yeah, we all started avoiding that.
Is that even there anymore? Does that exist?
There's a few little things in the corners there. I mean, I still go to the ramen shop I've got around the corner there.
Yeah.
First place I developed my love for ramen.
Yes.
I still don't know the name of it, but I got a picture of it in my neon pictures anyway.
I've stumbled many a night out of that joint. That's for sure.
And Gas Panic. Whatever happened to Gas Panic?
Oh, Gas Panic.
They overexpanded. Yeah. They expanded to like 5 different bars, and I think they might have overexpanded and crashed eventually.
True story. There's still, if the Hard Rock is still there in Tokyo, is it? Must be. But there's in the stairs, walking up the stairs, they have all kinds of pictures of, rock stars from the 80s and all kinds of shit. And there's still a picture of me with super long hair sitting next to Vince Neil there at the Hard Rock. Like I walked up there last time I was in Japan, walked upstairs and I went, what the hell? It's like a picture of me in 91 or something.
Eagles crew picture in there with John Hicks and the whole gang too. If I'm not
John Hicks.
It's a trip. Well, Skip, you are the ultimate story guy. You have had so much experience in your 40 years, and we thought that we might do a little something different than what we normally do, which is kind of just turn this into Skip Story Hour, because that's basically what we love to do when we're hanging out with you touring. We super enjoy that. But first, I want to try to help people understand where you came from and where you grew up, and how you got into this. Like, how did you become this amazing video director that you are now?
This business is all about doing something you love. If you're not totally passionate about this business, go find something else to do, because it's too hard. And if you don't love it, it'll run you right over. But that being said, find something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life, the man says. And I've certainly been very, very lucky in that regard. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, late 60s, early 70s. My dad was completely afraid that I was going to become a hippie. So he decided he was going to make a businessman out of me. So at a very early age, I started scalping tickets at Notre Dame football games. He would loan me $25, drop me off at the stadium at 9 a.m. And I learned to walk around and shuffle and buy and sell tickets. And I always had to give the $25 back at the end of the day, but I'd make $50-$60. Figured out that the security guard at the home locker room door would sell me a field pass for like $7. So I'd buy and sell till kickoff time, buy a field pass and go watch the game with the cheerleaders.
So you started in this business as a scalper. That's awesome.
I've never heard that angle before, but I like it.
I haven't heard that angle.
I learned all about the timing of a market and how that $150 ticket that's in your hand 10 minutes later is worth $5. Back in the days of Joe Theismann.
Right.
A little bit before Montana started playing for him. So while I'm doing this, I also was spending too much time sneaking into rock shows. I wanted to go to a lot of rock shows. I wanted to see more music than I could afford, basically. So I found my way into the Morris Civic Auditorium. I found my way into the ACC at Notre Dame. I saw Elton. I saw Yes. I saw King Crimson. Too many Siegelschwall shows. And decided when I was getting ready to go to college that I needed to go to a big enough school that would actually have big enough shows to deal with. So IU having 28,000 students or something, that sounded right to me. So I went to school at IU and on arrival, went up to the senior that was running the concert committee and said, I'm your boy. You're leaving next year. I'm jumping into your seat. Let me learn as much as I can. So it was 74, 75, 76, which was just salad days for rock shows at a college. We did the Stones, we did the Who, we did the Dead, we did Joni Mitchell, we did Dan Fogelberg. It was just a stream of everything. So went through the first year sitting in the second seat and learning how the whole thing worked. And because of stuff that had been lined up previous before me, by the time I got to be the chairman of the concert committee, the first show on my plate was Elvis Presley in 1977. So wow. I was the building guy for the Elvis show in Bloomington, one of the last 15 or so shows he did.
So we're talking fat Elvis.
No, bad fat Elvis.
Bad fat Elvis.
Yeah, bad fat Elvis, drinking bourbon and branch water in a Winnebago as they drove him down the ramp. So
popping pills.
Well, Jerry Weintraub in his book, he ran Concerts West, which was one of the first national promoters, right? They did all the Elvis shows. He had a special thing with Elvis. The King will never see any empty seats. So my job on this first big show that I was running was to cover, because they'd put it on sale after the students left town. The students weren't interested in Elvis anyway. So they sold the main floor in Assembly Hall, the basketball arena, and then the bottom dropped out of ticket sales. So there were only like 20 tickets sold in the balcony. So I had to cover both balconies of Assembly Hall completely with Black Visqueen, which is probably 6,000 or 8,000 seats up there. So I spent a good day and a half in the balcony.
That's a lot of Visqueen.
Covering every seat with Black Visqueen.
Would have been better just to give the tickets away.
You couldn't give away that many seats to them. It's a small town. The students had already left.
Yeah. Everybody in the town was already there.
Less than half when the students leave.
Yeah. Holy crap. I never understood that. Like, I still don't understand it. It's like, if you make the seats go away, does it look like the building's smaller? Because there's still a bunch of stuff there. You know what I mean?
With spotlights in your eyes, you only see the first 10 rows anyway, so who knows?
Well, yeah.
And you sound guys will appreciate the fact that whoever was his sound guy at the time had somehow forgotten his microphones at the previous show. So somebody had to freak out and run out in Bloomington that day and had to buy 2 microphones at Radio Shack.
Wow.
Yes. High quality.
I think that was on the rider.
He spent the whole show bitching about these dime store microphones he was singing into.
Wow. That's amazing.
We'll have to ask the historian at Clare Brothers about that.
Mike might know. Mike might know. And that's actually the dime store microphone quotes in a couple of articles from the show before. So that was just one of the shows I did in Bloomington. I learned everything about the business because it was a one-man shop basically. So I'd book the shows, get the posters made, get the tickets ordered, show up on the day. A Dan Fogelberg show I even catered too. For some reason I felt the need to cook everybody dinner on top of everything else. And beat on, spent more time producing shows and going to class actually. So finally my favorite show, I booked a show with Chick Corea and Stanley Clark, Return to Forever. It was my dream show of the year. And the agent called me and said, listen, the guys up in Sunshine Promotions in Indy wanted to book this really bad. You're only a concert promoter, so I had to split the deal with them. So they're getting 50% of this deal. So, okay, I still got the show. I still got 50% for the school. Fine. So that's in January. The show wasn't going to happen until April. In the process, the school decided that I either had to start going to more classes or GTFO. So I called the guys at Sunshine. They were impressed enough that I pressed them hard for a 50-50 deal. So I booked the show as the college promoter and worked the show as a stage manager working for the promoter Sunshine, which was my first jump into the actual business.
That's amazing. So you came at this angle of a love of music, but you weren't a musician. You came at this like, I love music and I want to be a part of it. And so you started in this promotional and house kind of a guy.
I was in the choir in high school. I played a little trumpet. I never took any of that seriously. And as I was, thinking, am I going to go into theater? What am I going to do? I figured there were a lot more 50-year-old stage managers than there were 50-year-old actors.
You already knew that when you were 20 years old? That's amazing.
So jumped up. I moved to Indianapolis, lived in a town I hated, doing a job I loved for another probably about 3 years with them. Was doing 15 to 25 shows a month all over Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio. Had a bunch of fun. Was once again, the guys, the promoters at Sunshine were booking the shows, and then I'd show up and do all the basic production of the day. This is back before SFX and Live Nation and everything, so it was all a very regional promoter land. The Belkins were over in Ohio. Arnie and the Jam guys were in Chicago, so we'd kind of pass bands back and forth as they came through.
Brass ring up here in Michigan, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in case you got, you younger guys know that there's only basically 2 promoters in the US, Live Nation and AEG these days, but there used to be real mom and pop close promoters. And certainly in the Midwest, there was kind of this group of promoters that were the big boys, and they all kind of worked with each other, and they were really well-known promoters that were kind of notorious for all kinds of things. Like sometimes
and
they
we
were
compete for ambiance. I mean,
Yeah.
Don Fox down in New Orleans would pull all kinds of crazy stuff. Everybody had to compete with Bill Graham, of course, because he would do a national tour like with the Stones for every once in a while.
right.
And we'd go down to Lexington and Louisville and compete with NTAM and Steve Gudis, and sometimes co-promote with them or whatever. Spent a lot of time in Louisville. I remember doing the Louisville Jam, living in a Winnebago in the stadium for a week, from the time we chalked the stage until the last piece of steel went out, and with like Steve Miller and Foreigner and REO, and it was a huge show. But I was living in the stadium for like 7 days, and I was still too young to buy the liquor for the show.
I always liked the individual local promoter, regional local promoter, because to me,
I did too.
It wasn't cookie cutter. You went in and somebody did something real good, and another guy did another part real good. Every promoter was different, had all their idiosyncrasies, and treated you different. And I like that. I don't like the cookie cutter one promoter thing anymore. I
mean, Buddy Sokoloff, you go to Chicago, you'd always see him. He'd come up with something great for you. Steve Gudis down in Lexington. Yeah, and it's like you went through and saw a different stack of people every time.
As much as we want things to be the same, we always talk about that. Like, I want everything to be the same every day. It was always nice in regards to that, like showing up and being like, oh, this guy's the killer catering guy, or this guy always takes care of us in regards to
the local flavor.
Had whatever. And that is kind of lost in this industry. It doesn't have that anymore. It's all, McDonald's.
Well, you try to, there's, too many bean counters and fall besides. But
yeah,
at the time, I was doing so many shows that sometimes it'd be physically impossible for me to get from one to the other. I'd do Billy Joel in Fort Wayne and have to be in Evansville for REO the next day. So I'm 22. I'm chartering a Cessna to fly me from show to show.
That's awesome.
The Cessna in a snowstorm. Hot footing it at 2 a.m. down the length of Indiana.
Wow.
So all this went very well until it wasn't my show. It was the Belkin Brothers show over in Cincinnati when the kids got killed at the Who show. It was a failure of security. There were 6,000 kids outside the arena, and a full moon night, and the band was sound checking late. And somebody either popped one door open or broke a window in a door, and the 6,000 kids all tried to crash through one door.
Oof.
And 11 kids died in the stampede. Very sad. And what it did was shut the business down in the Midwest, a little bit like our pause now. It was a hard shutdown for almost a year.
Wow.
Until everybody could rewrite the security rules and figure out how to do a GA show again safely. So the guys at Sunshine were very nice, said, hang out, use the phones, find another gig, do what you want to do, but we can't afford to pay you for not doing any shows, which is when I picked up stakes and decided I never liked living in Indy in the first place. So let's go someplace I really like and then figure out what I'm going to do. So I moved to San Francisco.
What was wrong with Indy, by the way?
Nobody liked being there. Everybody of my age, all they wanted to do was escape.
Okay.
Did it feel just too Midwesty, too farm based?
All the trends, everything came from a coast and came to us, and we were so far behind. You could count on us. We wouldn't warm up to a trend for 2-3 years. You'd have to take 2-3 years for us to decide it was our idea, and it might be cool. By then, the coast has moved on to something else new.
So you decided to go to a city where the trend was surely happening. You were on the cusp of the trend in San Francisco.
All this time in the promotions game, you're trying to figure out what the next big hit is. What's going to come out, what's going to work, what's not going to work. So I figured I was, some kind of a trend reader. So I figured, let me get a little farther ahead on the curve here. And what happened was Glenn Goodwin, who was the production manager for Crosby, Stills and Nash, had said, if you ever come to San Francisco, let me know. I'll give you the grand tour. So I went out one December, and he met me at the airport, drove me around town, drove me through Golden Gate Park on like the 18th of December. I just flown out of the snow and the slush of Indiana. And we're driving around Golden Gate Park, and it's green and it looks like the jungle, and maybe a little fog coming in. Takes me to a nice brunch down on Union Street. And what am I doing living in the slush?
For real. Yeah. Well, as you know, I grew up in San Francisco or near San Francisco, East Bay. So I know all about it. Listen, if I could afford to live there now, I would live there. For sure.
If I hadn't started when I did, I couldn't either.
Yeah.
So moved to San Francisco. Okay, I'm in the music business. There's only one way in here. It's Bill Graham. So I went and did a couple of Bill Graham gigs as a stagehand and quickly realized that A, there's no turnover. B, for me to get back to the position I was in Indy is going to be 20 years of waiting for other people to basically die and lose their positions. So I gave up.
It was tight. It was tight there. There were guys there that weren't going away.
There were people that never went anywhere.
Yeah. Lifers.
Still hanging around to this day.
Yeah.
So I was hanging out in this one cafe in North Beach and decided instead of hanging out once again, go where you're having fun, make a living out of that. So I started working at the cafe I was hanging out at and learned a little Italian family. I was like their only non-related employee, and learned to be a barista. Started cranking out cappuccinos, espressos, pouring beer and wine, making sandwiches, running the place 5 nights a week. Entered the county cappuccino competition, won that one year. And
this is way before like coffee. Like
okay. At this point,
yeah,
there were maybe 21 espresso machines in San Francisco,
right?
And the next closest one was Denver,
right? Like this was not, Starbucks didn't exist, none of that shit.
The guys from Starbucks came and sat in my cafe one afternoon when they were deciding how they were going to expand, because they were going up and down the West Coast looking for ideas for, well, if we start making more than one store in Seattle, how's that going to look? We got to go pick and choose all the good places from every place. So I found, rather than running around in circles on tour, maybe if I stand in one place, everybody will come by, which mostly they did.
Damn it, Skip. You just had to think about Starbucks and you would.
Yeah.
Why didn't you think?
Oh, there's so many of those things that have gone past. Look at Kenny G now, for Christ's sake. That's a lot of money not from playing saxophone.
Yeah, right.
So loved living in North Beach. It was the salad days. It was the first part of the 80s. And having a marvelous time there. And MTV had just kind of gotten started. And there was the U2 released their Streets Have No Name video that was shot on the rooftop in LA and was basically stolen without any permits.
Yes.
So the guys running around with a bullhorn and they're trying to distract the cops and all that stuff. And I look at my girlfriend and go, I just don't have enough of that kind of excitement in my life anymore. So she says, well, there was this guy. She was working at a video post house down in San Francisco, One Pass. She goes, well, somebody called the office today. They were looking for a cameraman for the U2 tour. And what's his name? I was, I don't want to mix business and pleasure. It's like, no, tell me his freaking name. Look him up at 411, call John Draper on the phone. Go, John, I hear you're looking for camera guys. I'd been volunteering at this little video art house called Video Free America for 3 or 4 years. I knew about sound and lights. I knew about stage management, but I didn't have any video chops. So I'd been.
Yeah, because there was. Let's just go back. There wasn't much video on tour back then, if any.
No. Yeah. Right.
This is previous to video for most everybody. So I'd been working at this on my off hours from bartending. Been working at this little place called Video Free America. Guy that did he did a couple of PBS specials back when the National Endowment for the Arts was still functioning and actually handed out money. So daytimes I'd run around and film NEA grant proposals and then go make coffee at night. So I knew how to run camera and had the basic video production chops together a little bit. So I track Draper down. He hires me to go out and do the Joshua Tree in stadiums in like October of, this is probably 86, 87, something like that. So that was my first hookup with Nocturne. And that lasted, if we hadn't shut down the warehouse, in the last 6 months, we would have made 30 years.
Nice.
29 and change.
Wow. And they had just kind of started as well, so they were building their business.
That's the whole story there is like 81. Bill Graham looked at Herbie Herbert, Journey's manager, and said, okay, we got Journey playing Day on the Green. Maybe you ought to think about putting one of those big newfangled video screens over.
Put one of them screens up there so the kids can see.
So Bill suggested to Herbie. Herbie said, great idea, Bill, let's do this. And started. They already had a lighting company that they, rather than rent lights, Journey bought their own and then would rent the lights to other people when they weren't on tour. He did the same thing with a video system. Paul Becker's brother and Paulie and a few of my friends that are still hanging around. And so they started Nocturne as a company around 81. Maybe somebody else was somewhere in that range, but basically you can say they were pretty much the first ones on the ground doing live.
Now, didn't Nightmare own Nocturne?
Yeah, Nightmare was just one of the management companies.
Okay.
So Nightmare was the Journey management arm. Nocturne was the video company and was the lighting company for a while until they decided that they had enough of lighting and sold all their lights off to Mexico. So it was basically at those days, it was Nocturne and Danny O'Brien were the two big players in the video game. And if we didn't do it, Danny probably did. And you only saw the top 10% of acts because they were the only ones that could afford video. So as everyone's career arc did this and came over the top, you just be able to slice off that little top part. And once they started getting over their peak, they didn't want to spend money on video anymore. So we'd end up moving on to the next
big one. Yeah, that's so awesome.
Well, how the thinking has changed now, but back then that's how
we developed this. A lot of people jumped onto this wagon. So I'm doing after the little U2 run, I'm doing handheld camera for George Michael. When I learned about the immediate gratification of this business, because I was doing handheld on stage, and George Michael would go down front, sing to the girls, wiggle his butt. I'd shoot his butt from behind. Aldo would put it on the screens. The girls would lose their minds. Full stadium girls screaming because of what I've
TWITCHELL butt shooter.
So that's kind of we all talk about getting the tingles. So that was the beginning of that.
Now, Skip, I did the Faith tour in the stadiums only. Maybe we worked together.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, I think it was late 80s, 89 maybe.
Yeah, that's
88,
right about
89.
Yeah, it was Faith.
Yeah,
remember it raining on us in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I was definitely there at the Orange Bowl. Yeah,
which was hilarious because the fashion at the time, the girls had all their hair piled up in big beehives. Which you put a little water on that, and the world just collapses. So it was the days of big hair and spandex. I don't know if that was the tour where somebody had a spray bottle with a little bleach water in it. They figured out that overstuffed spandex would pop if you sprayed a little bleach water over the barricade onto some girl's pants. So,
awesome.
back in the bad old days when we had too much fun, that would be totally unacceptable these days.
Those were long, hard days for me. I'll tell you that.
Oh boy, I'll bet they were. If you were third or fourth man on that tour, because that was a full on. Everybody was still learning the game.
Yeah,
it was still invented as you go.
Yeah,
I remember cameramen back in those days and video guys were kind of. Well, I mean, to be honest, you guys were like kind of the bastard stepchildren of the tour, right? Like
everybody hated us because when we showed up, bonuses stopped.
That's right.
There wasn't enough food left in catering.
It's just so damn expensive, those video guys.
Yeah, I mean, the backline guys completely hated us because we were like a whole nother bus of people.
Yeah.
We're in the way. We're stringing wires across everybody's other stuff and getting in the way, borrowing mic stands.
We'll get into that story in a little bit for sure.
But what I do remember is that I always used to make friends with video, especially the cameramen that were in the pit shooting in the front, because those were the guys that were getting the girls, man, because they were shooting girls and making introductions like, hey, you know, when I point the camera at you, do something. And then later on, after the show, they would be the ones that would be like, you know, arm in arm with 6 girls. And I was like, I want to be a video guy.
Well, from a director's point of view, you learned early on that audience shots raise the energy of the whole show.
Right.
Because if you're shooting people screaming, people see, even if they don't see themselves, they see somebody else going nuts on the screen. That's like, okay, I should be going nuts too. It's inspirational. And that's something that's never gone away. You see audience shots still to this day. And, you know, whether you're down there, whether the tour manager is giving you a pocket full of passes or not. Sammy used to make friends. Sammy still has friends all over the planet from all the days that he worked on Linkin Park in the pit.
That's a whole nother story, but yeah. Speaking of directing, let's talk about that a bit, because I always say, you know, there's only one guy in this business that can step in and I'll say mix or direct a rock show at the drop of a hat, and that's you. You can direct a rock show in your sleep. You know, you've got whatever the standard the cuts you go to or the moves you make. You could do it, you know, at the drop of a hat for any band, any genre. How did that become? How did that come? How did those visions come to you? How to do that so naturally and easily? Because there's a bunch of guys out there that do it for specific bands, but I know you and your expertise can drop in on any band anytime and have a good show right off the bat. How does that happen? What goes through your mind when you're getting ready to do that?
I went to school on a lot of people. I mean, really what we do as this, you know, rock and roll IMAG thing, a lot of it comes from The Last Waltz. If you go and you look at the cuts that Scorsese made to put together that show from the Fillmore, it really opened up a lot of paths for a lot of people. Now,
interesting.
If you haven't seen that movie and you're a kid, you need to go see it. I don't care if you're a video guy, a sound guy, a lighting guy, whatever. That video like literally changed my life. When I saw that video for the first time in college and was just like, holy shit, man, this is what I want to do.
And just the great acts. It's a really wide variety of people. The band went through all the stuff that we thought we were reinventing the world and we're cowboys and all that. The band went through all of that stuff and quit at The Last Waltz. And all we did was go through and redo all the stuff they'd already done.
Yes.
But that was the beginning for a lot of people. Paul Becker, who was one of the original guys at Nocturne, went to school on him. You know, working as a cameraman for these directors, you pick up if you want to get a lot of shots. It's really, you know, it's like Pavlov ringing the bell. You want that little red light to come on because that's instant gratification that whatever you're working on is being used.
Yeah.
So, you know, the harder you work harder and harder to make sure your light comes on more. And sometimes with 2 good cameramen going, it turns into kind of a slugfest. Oh yeah, take that. Well, let me fill in the gap over there. Let me try that on the other side. Paul Becker, my wife Kate, I worked on tour with her for more than 10 years straight, just as her go-to camera guy. And I learned how to hold a handheld camera very steadily. Wasn't all waving around. It's like, you know, it's a stump right there that you're going to set the camera on, so that, you know, as a director, if all things going crazy, you know, you've got one guy that you can punch a button to, and you know, you've got one good shot, so you can collect yourself and get everybody else back together.
So you're analyzing those camera guys right off the bat. You know, you got a safety guy or you got a safety person to go to every once in a while.
You're looking at who's coming up, who's consistent, who's not consistent, who's not going to bag you when you punch their button.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
So that we choose as sound guys, you know, we choose our crews who are hardworking and guys that can put up speakers well and whatever. But it sounds like you have a whole other level. You're looking for artistry guys, camera dudes that are like strong, that know their deal.
It's 50-50.
Yeah.
You got to know your gig. You got to get along. If you can't get along, I don't care if you're God's gift to camera guys. There's no way I'm going to live with you on a bus.
Yep.
Get along or get along. Yeah.
Get along.
Really,
G-I-T
that's so
along.
much of the business is how you interact with the gang you got together. And that being said, the mood on every tour comes from the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Whoever this is up here decides if it's Gloria Stefan, she's a sweetheart. Everything that good stuff rolls downhill.
100%.
If it's Gene Simmons, you know how Gene can be. It's not always happy, unicorns and rainbow farts out there.
We just had Eric Singer on last week, so yeah.
But you're right. I think that's true in any business, right? I mean, it stems from the top. That decides the attitude and the morale, and it just goes from there. There's no doubt about it.
And a big part of what we did at Nocturne was teach people both sides of that coin. Is that as we brought people on, you've got to think about the show as one entire piece. It's not just video, it's not just sound, it's not just lights, but the audience, the guy that shows up and pays his $35 to sit in the top row, is just looking at one giant rock show. And so if you can't be leaving your other crew guys out to dry, if they're having a bad day and you've got your stuff done, going out and hanging out on the bus not doing anybody any good. Maybe you can go over and help your brother out a minute. Set a good example. Maybe somebody else will come along with that. One of my company names I've got is Front Row Eyes. I've always said I was the front row eyes for the back row seats. Because if you're sitting up there in the cheap seats, all you can see is this big flashy lights and a little tiny guy on stage. If he wasn't on the screen, you wouldn't know what the heck they're doing. But if Prince looks at the camera and winks, and the guy in the top row gets it, job's done. He's going to come back, buy another ticket. We all keep working.
That's great.
It's a lot of years of experience talking there, people.
Yeah, sure is.
So you say your years of being a cameraman first obviously helped out big time when you finally got to sit in that chair and direct your first show.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a very kind client when you start easing into that, because one of my first shows I ever directed, well, I jumped in the seat of a lot of times for opening acts and done that stuff along the way. And but I always like to make the joke that one of the first things I went out and directed on my own was Andrea Bocelli. And as a video guy, there's nothing better you can have than a blind client.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I still have a feeling you knew everything that was going on.
Then you only have to please the wife or this actor or whoever. How was the show? Fantastic, Andre. You look wonderful. He'd pull his hood over his head and head for the bus.
That's horrible that I'm laughing at that, but it's great. That's fucking wonderful.
But
Guess we need more deaf clients, Tater.
Yeah.
Deaf clients.
But taking that holistic view on a show, on the production, is something that made the difference in how many clients we got and hung on to. Because when Dan Brown from Metallica looked at me one day and said, there's one reason we hire Nocturne every time, it's because you guys set the standard for the rest of the crews we got out here. The lighting guys look how you were approaching things. The sound guys look at how you guys are approaching things. And you don't have to be the boss to be a leader. You don't have to be the boss to be the guy that set the example. You can set the example as the number 6 guy on the lighting team if you're, mouth shut, ears open, jumping when somebody says frog.
Now I want to get into a little bit, because you, in your later years here, you've been in charge of hiring tons of people and like crewing out tours. And so maybe you can help us and our listeners to understand what it is that you're looking for in somebody. Like, when you're interviewing somebody and you talk to them, what it is that you see in someone that that they're going to succeed.
Number one, this is a word of mouth business. And when somebody calls me out of the blue and is looking for a gig, it's like, okay, you've got some experience. Who you been on tour with? Who can I call that will tell me you're worth hiring? Motivation. I had a guy that I hired who when I first started doing the hiring thing for Nocturne PRG, he had been sending resumes for 2.5, 3 years straight. And nobody at that point wanted to hire him because he had the same name as one of our regular guys. And they didn't want to cause the confusion of having one John Smith on one tour and the other John Smith on the other tour, and screwing up paychecks and all that other stuff.
Something simple as that. Yep.
Yeah.
But he continued to pound on us, and I finally gave him the chance, and he's been.
It said you have to change your name if you want to come work for me.
Okay, you're Boston, not Tennessee. We'll get that straight. Okay, as long as you agree to putting Boston in your name, you can still keep your name. And he's been doing Metallica gigs for 4 or 5 years now, I think.
Wow, that's awesome.
So tell me this. I see a lot now, the younger generation, they come out of these schools, and this isn't a slag on any of the schools or anything, but they come out of these schools and they just all of a sudden want to be a mixer. And they went to school and they're a mixer. They're a front of house engineer, they're a monitor engineer, they're a lighting director, never touched a par can, never been on tour, plugging one in, never hung a speaker, never hung a video screen. So are you getting those people that like that when you're hiring? And like you've said earlier, that your experience in doing the camera first and moving into the director's seat and that stuff. But these guys now with no touring experience go to school and then want to be the director. How do you feel about that? And when they give you a resume, how do you approach them?
Are you the best friend of the pop star?
Okay,
If not,
that's one way.
You're not going to start that high.
Yeah.
If you want to start that high on the food chain, you better have grown up. You make somebody that you went to school famous.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and really, if you're going to be good at it, if you're going to make it a profession or a career, you want to start from the bottom up so you know how all the gears work. I started as a runner. I like I said, in school, I printed tickets, did posters, run around the campus, putting up leaflets and John stalls, did everything from the bottom up so that way you understand how the whole machine works. So when you're in a position where things are starting to go a little pear-shaped, you know how to deal. I was listening to a podcast with Digby yesterday about him talking about, some DJs who've managed to hire their best friends to be their production managers, and how do they react when you've got 50,000 people in a stadium and the lightning storm's coming.
Yeah.
So, people,
they don't react well. Yeah.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah. It's just this business is so much, at least I feel it's all about your experiences and to getting to the certain positions and stuff. You just very hard to move into a position of video director and not have that backup before of especially, I don't know, on video crews, are usually the director also the crew chief, or is there another crew chief?
There's generally, you try to separate director and crew chief because you want the crew chief to be on the floor all day, directing traffic, making sure that you're meshing with the rest of the crews. The director tends to be more of the liaison with the artist and maybe the top liaison with production.
Okay.
So that you got a little different division of labor there.
I guess I will apologize for all those years we've worked together. I would always come directly to you then.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm a crew chief that became a director. So it's like I have a hard time taking that old crew chief hat off.
Okay. Yeah. Go tell Skip. Yeah. Okay. Go ask Skip. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Chris Lamb drilled it into me. If I don't know about it, how can I help you?
Yeah, there you go.
Let me know what's going on.
I always tell new people as they're coming up that here's the thing, man. If you are the guy or girl that is pulling feeder with a smile on your face and you're the last person to close the door on the truck and still telling jokes, That's the guy that I'm going to listen to, guy or girl that I'm going to listen to, who's saying, hey, I want to be a mixer. Can you help me to be a mixer? I'm going to grab that one and say,
Absolutely.
you're a damn hard worker. Why don't you come here, man? Let me show you some shit and let's get you up. And that person is going to accelerate in their, period of time of being the grunt all the way up to being a mixer tenfold, because they're showing that ability to, be a hard worker and be happy.
Loving it and showing the passion for it and showing that they're ready to stand up and do the hard work. You got somebody that's asking every day, am I done yet? Can I go now? Can I go hang on the bus? It's like,
backpack on already.
Not the bus.
On,
you can go to the Greyhound.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I could throw out one tip on that. If you're the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth person on the audio crew and the monitor engineer is still loading the truck and you're showering, there's an issue.
Yes.
True enough. I mean, it takes a long damn time to be able to walk away from a loadout without guilt.
That's
true.
Well,
You've been doing this. Been doing this a mighty long time.
I don't want to brag on the younger generation, but I see people now. I hear people work with people, maybe 5, 6 years experience, maybe 10 years experience in this business, saying, I'm beyond loading the truck. I've done this. I've been doing this for years, loading this truck. And, nobody's beyond it at any point. Let me tell you, I'm the first one here to tell you that.
Yeah.
No, it's the gear that you got to wake up and deal with tomorrow. So if you don't care if it gets broken in transit, then you're just being too short-sighted. Another thing, gift you should have in this business is pre-visualization. You need to be able to be laying in your bunk the night before and thinking about how your next day is going to go. What are you doing? What's the layer of things coming in? If the stage manager isn't being so good about getting your gear off the trucks when you're ready for it, then maybe you can't change his mind, but you still got to find a way to deal with it. What's your storage? What are you doing? Where's your stuff going? Ethan, God bless Ethan. He just took good care of everybody, and not everybody is as kind as Ethan is.
Right.
When you're coming in, a lot of times being the add-ons of video guys can be the pariahs, and you better be in the trenches and grinding hard, because talking is not going to impress anyone. It's what you do.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, we got about 10 minutes left, but we do have question and answer, so we'll get to some of this. But you have the greatest stories, man. In these last 10 minutes, can we just talk about some of the experiences that you've had over the period of your life? I remember you talking about McCartney and Ringo moment.
Ooh, yeah.
And I remember you talking about Michael Jackson gig where they parked a tank in front of the... Anyway, just share, I don't know, what's your favorite story to tell?
Been through here without making them too long. Earth Day 93, maybe, in the Hollywood Bowl, was Paul McCartney and a bunch of other acts, and I was still a handheld guy, and we're sound checking in the afternoon. I'm standing next to the drum kit with the camera on my shoulder, and Ringo shows up.
I've heard of that guy.
I'm thinking, oh my God, here's my shot, my one shot of doing a Beatles gig. There's Paul. I'm standing between Paul and Ringo with my head on a swivel going, where's George? Come on. Which of course he didn't do. But, for somebody that has made their life about live music, it was just a complete thrill.
One of my highlights of my life is walking into a room with Paul McCartney in it. That was like, wow.
And I did at least 1 year touring with him, where it was every day.
Did you eat a lot of vegan? Did you have a lot of? You had a lot of
steakhouse
vegetables
every day off. What happens about him making everybody eat vegetarian is that the steakhouses make a lot of money on off days.
Yeah, I bet they do.
He doesn't want to spend his money on meat. That's fine. Don't get busted with a quarter pounder back by the system, though. One of our guys figured out the whole day.
Is that a send you home moment if you get busted with the quarter pounder?
No, you get a serious finger wag.
Okay.
You don't get 2 strikes, but he'll give you one. Because there's no reason for Paul to be as nice a guy as he is, considering how famous he's been for his entire life and surrounded by it. But really, there's nothing he likes better than at like a crew party, he'll come and hang out and talk to us. You sit there and have a glass of wine and shoot the shit about this, that, or the other thing, because he knows we're not going to treat him like a star. We're going to treat him like a regular bloke. And in his position, or as in anybody rock star's position, that's really welcoming, and it's really, it makes you feel good.
My roommate from college is Abe Laboriel Jr., and he plays drums for
really?
Yeah. And he tells a quick story where they had a short flight in Europe. They were going from one gig to another, and after they got up in the air, everybody started having a good time, and they started celebrating. We're having a good time, and the pilot came on the thing and said, "Hey, everybody, got to get in your seats. We're about to land. Because it was a short flight." And Paul McCartney went up to the front, opened the door, and said, "We're not landing. Tell the guys that we're not landing. We're having a great time up here." and so only Paul McCartney can tell the flight people, the airport, that nope, we're not landing. Spin us around again because we're having a good time.
We need another hour up here. We'll be down when we're ready.
All right, well, I got to give my one Paul McCartney story now.
Okay, what do you got?
Very quick. I know he's a real guy because I stood next to him at Heathrow baggage claim.
Oh,
wow.
That doesn't tell you he's a real dude. Nothing real, right?
That's it. Was he pulling his own bags off?
Him and his wife.
That's fantastic.
Well, second wife.
You gotta be a regular guy. He's had a few.
Yeah. Take notes, Justin Bieber. Anyway, go ahead.
No kidding. I did one short leg of The Ultimate Event with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr.
Wow.
And
legendary
boxing ring for, in the round with the orchestra surrounding. And Sammy would come hang with us during the day. He, having grown up in the theater since age 3, had an appreciation for the production crew. Had no airs about him at all. And really, I was complete respect for the man. Funny thing, it turned out later that his press agent, I had met again later in life, who actually turned out to be Robin Williams' manager, Dave Steinberg. But
so that was the Robin Williams connection, because later on you did a tour with Robin as well.
Yeah,
right?
that didn't cause me to get the job, but it was like, wait, I've seen you somewhere before, David, for some reason.
You look familiar.
Yeah. I thought about a little Jackson blurb this morning, because how do you keep a pop star on the road when maybe they would really rather go home and they might have enough money to just blow it all off and go home?
Please tell us, how do we do that?
Well, you create an atmosphere that when they show up, it's happy, happy, joy, joy. Yes. You're not yelling at each other. You're not still trying to hang the lighting truss at 6 p.m. You're not, stuff's not blowing up. And from the artist perspective, when they walk into the building, it should be welcoming and, okay, we've all laid out the soft pillows for you to come land on and do your little bit of the day, because really we bitch about 16-hour days in arenas all day long. How about 16-hour days hanging out in the hotel, and then you only get 2 hours of fun a day?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a reason people get into drugs and drink.
And then have to do press and all that yucky stuff. Ugh.
Bored and just so really, who has it better, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
so along those lines,
they have it better.
My gig on the Jane tour was setting up the onstage quick change booth for Michael. And we had a little road box that had a TV and a VCR and a video game in the quick change booth for him to waste time when we were getting things ready for him to come out and check dancers and whatever. So I had heard on the slide that he was a Three Stooges fan. So I had a stack of Three Stooges VHSs at home. So on a break, I threw in my suitcase and came back. And every day when they came on the radio, the pizza's being delivered, they say, and he's hitting the stadium, I'd go and pop the Three Stooges tape in and make sure it was rolling when he came up on stage and ducked into the quick change before he came up on stage. So every day he shows up and there's something to laugh about. But I'd go back in to close the thing up on the loadout and the tape would be gone. He kept nicking them and taking them back to the hotel and never returning.
Benny, get my tapes back.
So actually, I went to Michael, who was his dresser, and grabbed him one day and said, "You got to tell Mike to bring some of the damn Stooges tapes back because I'm running out. He goes, wait a minute. He sticks his arm in the quick change room, pulls Michael out by the wrist, and goes, Mike, apologize to Skip for stealing his tapes. I'm sorry. That's okay, Mike. Take all you want. I'll go home and make some more. It'll be fine. Okay, thanks.
Wow. Amazing. And for Michael, were you the director? Were you shooting? What were you doing for?
I did Dangerous. I was the dolly in the pit. And then I was on the later leg of it. I was the AD. So I rolled all.
Awesome.
Next to the director and rolled all the content.
So I never got to see him live. I've seen some footage, and his records are like, I worship at the altar of his records. But how was he live? Was he as awesome as they say?
Different than, from an audience point of view, than anybody else. There's more of a complete laser focus on that one piece of stage than with any other artist I've ever seen. I mean, he would come out and he'd do the opening gag where he either was the toaster or the thing would pop up and he'd jump out, and then he would stand on stage for 1 minute to 3 minutes, just looking around and letting the crowd scream. And
amazing. You
don't know how long it's going to last. You have no idea. I'm doing a little tracking shot underneath him with the firefall going on behind him, which should probably be on my business card if you're going to say, one shot that I managed over the years. And then he'd take his sunglasses off and I'll go screaming again.
Have you seen that shot like later on, like if you're watching a documentary or something, have you been like, I shot that?
I've got a lot of those actually.
That's amazing.
I shot Bill Clinton's sax solo.
Oh, really? Dude, you're the sax solo guy. That's amazing. Right on.
No, I had a few of those things. But yeah, the MJ stuff, it was amazing because it was so huge and there were so many people. And that, I think that the leg of Dangerous where we had the flying carpet, which was this full stadium stage, and the stage would lift up and there was a second stage underneath it that had all the Thriller stuff with all the skeletons and the coffins and everything else. And just the amount of production and stuff that went into it. That was where we had the 2 Russian cargo planes, the Antonovs, which were
who was mixing front of house? Was it Trip Caliph?
Trip was front of house.
Right.
God bless him. He's one of the funniest guys on the planet. Boy, he'll send you up.
Yes, he will.
Tell me what I want. I give them what they need. But I like to tell stories about the Antonov just because I spent 16 weeks on that Antonov.
I was going to save that for the Q&A section.
All right. Well,
let's talk about an Antonov. Like, if you've never seen one of those airplanes, let's talk about that on the Q&A because it'll take a few minutes.
Yeah, that'll take a bit too long.
Russian plane that you put gear into, it's awful.
Yeah, it's like a giant truck in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the? I remember you saying some time ago about at a Michael Jackson show somewhere in the Ukraine or something. They backed a tank into there to keep you from looking out. Like, what happened?
We were in Istanbul.
Oh, Istanbul.
We're Istanbul. We're loaded in. We're the thing about that tour was you never knew that he'd canceled a bunch of shows along the way. So every day there was a little bit of trepidation where we actually going to get the show done and move on. We had a map in the crew compartment of the Antonov with a map on the wall, and we wouldn't draw the line in until we'd landed, because if you do it before we took off, you might not go there. Wow. So the show day in Istanbul, we're all set up, and he decided that he needed to go to rehab because he'd been taking too many pain pills for his wisdom teeth that he wouldn't go get fixed. So basically he flew to London and then sent us a fax and said, I'm not going to be there tonight. Sorry. I'm checking myself into rehab.
You got a fax. That's awesome. That was the early way to email.
No, this is back when
on thermal paper.
Yeah.
So
it's all curled up.
It's all curled up, and you had to pull it apart to see that he wasn't coming. Yeah, he's not coming.
He ain't coming. So Benny, God bless him, comes around and says, okay, everybody get your visqueen out, cover all your gear. And the doors had just opened. We had 8,000 or 9,000 kids in the stadium already. So
I did an entire tour with Whitney Houston like this. Yeah.
We covered the gear in plastic, And he said, okay, everybody walk back to the stadium, walk back to the hotel in groups of 3 or 4. We're sending the buses across the river, so they're not going to be out in the parking lot.
Right.
And we don't know what's going to happen, so we got all shut down. So we all go back to the hotel and sit there for 2 days while they try to negotiate what's going to happen, because it's obvious Mike is not going to come back and do this show. And somehow we've got to get our gear back out of this stadium. So we go over, we take a walk by just to see what's going on over there in day 2. And they've actually parked a tank in the loading door of the back of the stadium. The gun was facing out, at least. It wasn't
Well, at least there was that.
But they were not messing around with their crowd control. They had a tank parked in the back. So after 2.5 days, they finally decided, okay, we're going to let you load it out and load it up back up in the Edwin Shirley trucks and go away. Oh, that was the other thing about being dolly operator on Dangerous. One of my best dolly pushers was Del Roll, who you might know as the president of
Del Roll.
Edwin Shirley Trucking.
Yeah.
He'd be down there in the pit.
that's
How
a
else
good
you going to hang out in the pit in the Michael Jackson show? He's pushing me back and forth while we're doing
Wow.
while we're doing black and white and jumping up and down.
That's
So we had no stagehands. We took us like 8 hours to take the whole show down and get
Promoter ain't paying for that shit now.
Yep, and not now. But they did eventually move the tank, though, huh?
Unloaded all the pyro and piled all the flash powder and everything else up on a wall up against the edge of the back side of the loading dock and lit it off just before we left and put a big black smudge on the side of the building. Is probably still there.
Awesome.
And, I'm running around with my little, because this is back in the day. We'll get to the Voodoo Cafe later too. We're going to run out of time here. Completely.
Well, we have run out of time, but we're going to get to some of the Q&A stuff for sure.
So I'm running around feeding everybody espresso, and Pepsi had given us hats because we're in Istanbul. Instead of baseball caps, they gave us fezzes. A Pepsi fez that was waiting in everybody's hotel room. So I'm running around in my Pepsi fez with a tray, shucking out shots of espresso and keeping everybody going. So we got everything out, and everybody cheered on the charter plane when we left Turkish airspace safely.
Wow. So you had this?
It got worn out, actually. It finally fell apart from wear.
That's awesome.
But that's a picture that I haven't been able to find. I got to dig deeper in the archives to see if I can find that picture of me running around in a Pepsi fez.
Oh man,
Pepsi
good
swag.
times. Yeah.
Well,
listen,
take all the coke out of your mini bar. They come to your room, knock. If you'd already checked in, they knock on your door, take the coke out of your mini bar, and put Pepsi back in.
As you do.
Wow, nice.
And you're not paying for that
gig.
Pepsi, right? No.
Well, it's a mini bar in a hotel. Of course, you're paying for it. But you don't have choice.
Well, that's ridiculous. that sounds like Can't Touch This. Who's that? What's that guy's name?
Oh yeah,
Hammer when he FedExed Pepsi home.
Yeah, all of his people were like FedExing Pepsi
12 packs.
Yeah, 12 packs home. Anyway, good times. He
FedEx.
had like literally like a $2 million FedEx bill at the end of a tour because of all the people on tour were FedExing 12 packs of Pepsi back to their house.
On his FedEx number. He could have just called Pepsi and gave them their addresses. They'd have dropped a pallet off for free. Instead, we'll run up
that's
FedEx
how
number.
going back to being the bad boy.
Yep, that's it, man. That's it. Hey, Skip, thank you for coming, man. We sure appreciate it. We appreciate you. We love you. You're the best in the industry, and hang tight. We're gonna do a little Q&A thing. So for the rest of you guys, probably tomorrow afternoon, we'll post that as a little extra tease here for Skip. So stay tuned. Go to our YouTube channel tomorrow to pick that up.
Before we get off,
yep,
I'm trying to make a little money in the pandemic here by selling my neon art prints.
Oh shit!
That's right. We didn't get into that. So Skip, in his little spare time there in pandemic land, has been creating some neon sign stuff. How'd you get into that?
All along the way for 25 years, and I finally found something to do with them. I'm printing them on high gloss aluminum.
Ooh.
And various sizes. You can order special sizes. I just put a couple of calendars together for my Black Friday sale. So you can get a calendar or you can get specific prints. Neonartprints.com.
Cool. Neon Art Prints.
NeonArtPrints.com.
And I went and checked it out, and there's some really great ones there that I would love to have in my house. So go check it out, guys. NeonArtPrints.com.
The ones there are making me hungry and thirsty, I can tell you that.
And so we're giving a slice to Music Cares for every sale. So
cool.
I'm trying to help our roadies out, like roadies helping roadies.
Yeah.
Doing the right
That's
thing.
great.
You know, hey, Skip, well, we're already over, so who cares?
Yeah.
Do you think there should be a website, and maybe there is, I don't know, for all the roadies like yourself that are doing creations? Let's say some guy's making soap and you're doing your signs, and somebody else is doing candles, and Ethan's got his Ethan the Stoner got their
Their roadies helping roadies thing. Yeah.
Their gaiters and t-shirts. Should there be a unified website where a guy like me can go, hey, every week I'm going to spend $25 helping a roadie out, and I'm going to pick one this week? How can, shouldn't it all be?
There's a Facebook page called Pivoting Entertainment Professionals.
Oh, okay.
I can't think of the girl's name who started that, but she's been working on putting together something like that. Pivoting Entertainment Professionals, I'm pretty sure, is the Facebook page. And we're so disorganized as a industry.
Hard to believe.
I mean, it's no wonder that we get nothing from the government, because they still don't know what we do.
Well, that's
true.
You know what? We were talking about that, saying, it's all this talk is only amongst ourselves. You can't educate the public who didn't know what we did before and expect them to know what we do now. It's impossible.
Hey, Chuck Schumer, the minority Senate leader, managed to get Irving Azoff and Michael Rapino to sit down in front of Congress only because his daughter couldn't get Springsteen tickets.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's what it
got
takes.
Tickets, he lost interest.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how to get a lobby, like how to get, I have said all along in this that it's like, well, what about these huge publicly traded companies, Live Nation and AEG? Why aren't they screaming, kicking and screaming and saying, hey, pay attention to us, but I guess it costs money to do that. So,
and there's the scrutiny you get on the backside of that.
Yeah.
It's the same reason that, Jim started the ESA, because we would rather write our own rules than have somebody who doesn't understand our business write the rules for us.
Correct, which is
Speaking of that ESA thing, if you're somebody who's in this business or thinking about getting into this business, coming back to it, go to the ESA, do the $10 safety training course, go to OSHA, spend $25, get your OSHA 10. It's stuff that really matters and makes a difference. We're not in the cowboy days anymore.
Yeah.
ESA stands for Event Safety Alliance, guys.
Event Safety
very,
Alliance.
very important.
Look them up, because, hey, we've had too many accidents in this business, and we can avoid them if we all pay attention.
Yeah, we all see it coming. You're not going to get hired unless you have one of these courses or 2 or 10 under your belt anyway. So it's coming.
So now's the time to do it while you've
Now's
got
the time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just very lucky. We were the guinea pigs for all that stuff and took every one of those darn classes. And ones
we were the testers.
Hey, you got to take this. Doesn't have anything to do with it. We're going to take it anyway. But yeah.
But I mean, it says something. It says something that, Tater, you and I that have 30 years, and Skip that has 40 years are saying, hey, those days of cocaine cowboys are gone. That doesn't exist anymore. We need to be, it's a business. We need to be safe. We need to be paying attention. We're moving big, heavy shit around that people could get hurt by.
And stuff over people's heads every day. I don't want somebody coming in half drunk and doing that over my head.
That's right. But that's what it used to be. But, so the perception of our business is still that, I think, a little bit. And so it takes all of us to kind of change that, and especially, Jim Digby is leading he's leading the rats.
Yeah, I think about even the last time I've seen a truss ladder or someone climb a truss, even with a harness on, let alone without. Remember, people used to rappel from the trusses and all that.
We finally decided we're going to invent stuff that you can do that without having to climb. You can run a spotlight from the truss without having to climb up it. Which is saving a lot of old stagehands, a lot of pain. Let me tell you that.
Thank God.
For sure. Keeping them working.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, pay attention to our Q&A tomorrow. We're going to go to another Zoom room and have another 30 minutes with Skip. So there's going to be a lot more to listen to tomorrow. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate you for hanging late. Skip, thank you so much. We
Always a pleasure.
appreciate
Glad
you.
to see you guys.
Great to see you.
Have a good one.
Next week, Wrong End of the Snake is going to be dark. We are not going to have a Wrong End of the Snake next week. But 2 weeks from now, on December 8th, on Wrong End of the Snake, we will have Toby Francis. Toby is also a 40-plus year touring veteran, sound engineer, production manager, and a member of the Claire Global sales team. He has worked with many today's A-list artists, including Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, Travis Scott, Kanye West, and many, many more. You know, he sent me this today, and I saw that there were 4 artists on that list, and I went, come on, dude, you've worked for like 100 well-known artists, you know? So if you don't know Toby, you should tune in and check him out. The guy has a lot of insight into our business and is deep into Claire Global and assisting people to try to, you know, get better jobs and, you know, that kind of stuff. He'll be a great guy to pay attention to. So that's Toby. That's in 2 weeks on December 8th. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. We just passed over 1,300 subscribers to our channel. We are very grateful, and we have helped that you have helped us to reach this milestone. Thank you. Subscribe and smash like on all of our videos. Please, it helps. Also, we are still trying to get our elected officials to listen to us about restart and include it in the debated current stimulus package. Right now, we are collateral damage. In other words, our pleas for help are being unheard. We need funding to keep the 12 million people in the live event industry afloat. Many of us are independent contractors, or we own small businesses that have not had income since March. Please go to extendpua.org, wemakeevents.org, NAMM.org, NAMM, or for help with mental health and well-being, please go to the roadieclinic.com. Keep the pressure on. Contact your representative in the House and Senate and remind them about our forgotten industry and ask them to include the Restart Act in the stimulus package. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Skip. And
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Wear your mask. Don't sneeze on your friends.
That's it. That's
There
the
you
deal.
go.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks, December 8th with Toby Francis.